in the class. For one thing, hopefully more people will show up before then. So we're going to pick up with Act 1, Scene 2, I believe it is, page 1612. Yeah, 1612. This is after Hamlet's conversation with the king and queen, and the king begs Hamlet to stay at Elsinore and not go back to Wittenberg because he is the most immediate to our throne, as he puts it, meaning you're next in line. Okay, and then they all leave, and Hamlet gets his first mentioned this word before, soliloquy. He gets his first soliloquy, okay? Which, bear in mind, is when a character is alone on stage and speaks to the audience and essentially is thinking out loud. Okay, that gives us what the character really believes to be true. The other day, I put up on the board some of the themes of the play. You know, we talked about spying being one. Talked about appearance versus reality being another. We've talked about play acting, which is kind of related to that, which could be another. We're going to get introduced to two others. In fact, death, call it the commonality of death, or the ubiquity of death, being something everybody has to deal with. That's the whole point, really, of Claudius's long speech to Hamlet, okay, in the previous part of this same scene. So they all leave, Hamlet comes out, and Hamlet gives us this soliloquy, okay? Notice what he says in the opening, 7 or 8 lines at least. He says, "Oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew, or that the everlasting had not fixed his canon against self-slaughter." Okay? Now, the word sullied there is the word that's found in a couple of early editions, are called quartos, of Hamlet. Okay? In the first folio, the first collected edition of his plays, put together by his fellow actors in the acting company he was part of, in that edition, it reads solid. "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, resolve itself into a dew." What's the difference between those two words? Sullied and solid. Look at this one first. What does that imply? Okay, what's he talking about? That is, what's the main noun? What's the main object of that line? Flesh, the body. Okay? "Oh, that this too solid flesh." This flesh, it's like he's saying, it's too real. It's too fleshly. It's too solid. Okay? Would do what? Would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. We're going to talk about that part later. Okay? So, this is implying the physicality of the body, of the flesh. Okay? What's this mean? If you have a sullied reputation, for example, recent, kind of political history, the one of the things that started, not the impeachment stuff, but the earlier problems, Trump was having, involved a guy who had been on his campaign for about 6 months, a guy named Carter Page. Okay? And what did the FBI do quote unquote, to this guy named Carter Page? Anybody know? They surveilled him. They spied on him. Literally. I mean, we're talking wiretaps in this case. We're talking human intelligence, et cetera, et cetera. The FBI got what's called the FISA court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Authorization Court, got them to allow the FBI to do all this kind of stuff. Okay? It's now, last 6 months, been totally proven they did all this illegally. I mean, even the FISA court has said you had no grounds, you had no real grounds to investigate this guy. So the proverbial statement that is now said, and this goes way back into the 1980s when another guy was being investigated, the statement that is now said is, where does he go to get his reputation back? Because after your name's been dragged through the mud, how do you get it undragged through the mud? How do you get it out of people's minds so that people, they hear the name Carter Page, they think, oh, Russian spy. He was actually working for the CIA against Russia. Okay? So, his reputation has been sullied. So what does sully mean? Louder? Ruined. Ruined how? I mean, it's got a really particular meaning. Dirtied. Stained. It's like before, he was white as snow. Now, he's got mud splotches all over him. So if something is sullied, it's been dirtied. It's been stained. Okay? Now look at the line. Oh, that this too sullied flesh. What's the difference between sullied flesh and solid flesh? Well, if it's flesh, it's solid, right? It's not like it's suddenly gaseous. That's an automatic. They go together. Sullied, however, doesn't necessarily go with flesh. Sullied in this context, sullied is a much more difficult reading, okay? Which means, in what's called some of the principles of textual criticism, it's probably original. Shakespeare probably meant sullied, and somebody saw a manuscript and they couldn't quite tell, was this an O or a U? And they looked at the next word, flesh, and thought, well, flesh is solid. Oh, so it means, oh, that this too solid flesh. But that's not Shakespeare's point. Why? Because of what comes in the next line. Oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. Well, how do you melt flesh? So that it melts, thaws, and resolves, reforms into dew. Well, flesh doesn't, right? I don't know if you've ever had the unpleasant experience of being on fire. I have. Your body doesn't just melt, okay? It burns, okay? So what's he talking about? He's using an image from something else. How many of you like hard liquor? Not beer, because that's not hard. It's sissy liquor. Not wine, sissy liquor. Vodka, bourbon, whiskey. Okay? What kind of alcohols are all of those? They're different than beer and wine. They're all distilled. Every one of them. So what do you do when you distill something? You put water in a pot, you heat it up till it boils, and then what do? You have to have a lid on it, and that lid, so here's your pot, here's your fire underneath, you put a lid on it, and that lid has then got to have something that when the steam rises up, it can come out through here. Okay? And when the steam hits this coil, what does it do? It goes through. It condenses. Okay? So, let's just say you're boiling water. You get water from the tap, from the sink. You put it in here. What does that water have in it? Let's say you live in Flint, Michigan. Maybe you're totally unaware. Flint, Michigan, the last 5 years, has been discovered they have horrible water. That is, the city water supply is loaded with lead. Lead causes birth defects, causes brain damage, all kinds of problems. So, you put the water in here, you boil it. When it comes out here, what is it?
Clean.
Clean. What's another word for that?
Purified.
It's pure. It's purified water. You go to the store, you go to Kroger, and you buy an 87-cent gallon of purified water. It means it's been purified. What has happened? It has been melted, thawed, and resolved into dew. That is, when it drips out of here, there are no impurities in it. Okay? So, I don't know if you've ever been backpacking. My dad, my brother, and I used to go backpacking in the Sierra Nevada. And that would mean we were usually off trail, because it's not like backpacking in the Smokies where you have to follow the trail and you have to stay at specific camp. No, you go wherever the hell you want, okay? So sometimes that would mean our drinking water would not be running from a swift-flowing river or creek, because if it is, you can drink it straight from there. If it's rather still and stagnant, do you scrape the algae off and drink what's underneath? 2 words, hell no, because you're going to get all kinds of bad stuff. What do? You boil it, because in boiling it, you purify it, okay? So now go back to this image. And you got to spend a lot of time on it, because Shakespeare's really wanting us to think about what this means. Oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. What's he saying about his body?
Was it purified?
He wants it purified. If he wants it purified, then what does it state now? It's rotted. It's corrupt. It's sullied. Okay? So how do you do that? Fall down on your knees and pray to Jesus? Maybe. It's not in this context. What's the point he's getting at? Go back to a little speech that his mother said to him. She says, why seems it so particular with thee? That is, his father's death. And then she says, you know it's common. Everything dies. It passes through nature to eternity. Okay, there's that theme of death right there. Passes through nature. Okay? Hamlet's talking about the same kind of thing here. Only here, he's talking about another kind of passage. It's purification. And resolve itself into a dew, that is, that the body would be made purified, refined. According to traditional Christian belief, Christian dogma, that's the whole goal of the Christian life. It's to be, quote unquote, sanctified, made holy. Christ tells his followers, be ye perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. Doesn't mean go for 90%, man. You can do it. Get on that curve. No. So, Hamlet says, oh, that I wish this could happen. Or. Why does he introduce an or? O-R, not O-A-R. Let's assume this can't happen. Or that the everlasting had not fixed his canon against self-slaughter. The first one is implying, God, take me away now. Resolve me. That is, remove me from here, thaw, melt me, let me die, and resolve me, it's implied, in heaven. Remake me in heaven. Give me the kind of body Jesus had after the resurrection in heaven. Okay? Or, okay, so God's not going to do that. Why? Because he's still talking. Or, let me kill myself. Or that the everlasting had not fixed his canon. Canon is law, rule against suicide. What's that tell us? Is going through Hamlet's mind early in the play. He's already thinking of suicide. He's already wishing, man, I wish I could off myself. Why? How weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me. There's that verb again, seem to me, all the uses of this world. To me, Hamlet says, my perspective, and notice he's emphasizing that, because what does that mean? Not your perspective, not your perspective, not your perspective. This is my perspective. All the uses of this world are what? Meaningless, hopeless. Why do people commit suicide? I don't know who committed suicide. They have no hope. They see no light at the end of the tunnel. The tunnel is nothing but darkness. And it's not darkness receding. It's darkness coming faster and faster and faster. And it's gonna smother them. They can't go on anymore. Okay? That's Hamlet's. He's almost there at this point. Phi on it. That means F it. F the world. Life's a bitch, and then you die. Okay? I mean, you got to get yourself into Hamlet's mind so that in just a few moments, he's going to talk with Horatio and the others, and he's going to talk with the ghost, and then he's going to say, after he talks with the ghost, if perchance I should act crazy later on, don't let on that I'm acting crazy. The question I asked the other day is he acting? Because some people would say, and I'm pretty much among us, somebody who is contemplating suicide, they are crazy. Why? What is one of the number one, what's the word I want? Instincts in humanity. Really in all living things. Survival. Protection of yourself. And if you're suicidal, you're doing just the opposite. Okay? 'Tis an unweeded garden, the world, that grows to seed. Things rank and gross in nature possess it merely. And I think when Hamlet says that, here's the Globe Theater. You got the stage, and at the back of the stage, you've got what's called the tiring house. And you've got 2 or 3 doors coming from this area to out here to the stage where everybody is. This is where people, change costumes, that kind of stuff. And I think before Hamlet begins his speech, when Claudius and Gertrude and the others leave, they go through one of these doors. And when Hamlet says this line, if I were directing, I would tell him, you need to turn to that door that Claudius just left out of. Because Claudius hasn't been gone. How long has it taken Hamlet to say these lines? Less than a minute, probably. He turns and points. Things rank and gross in nature, like my stepfather. Do what? They possess it. What's he saying about the world? Okay, he said it's an unweeded garden. Well, what was it? According to traditional Christian, belief, mythology, whatever term you want to use, what was it at the beginning? It was a paradise garden. But now, it's unweeded. If it's unweeded, then what are the weeds doing? They're taking over everything. Why do we call something a weed? Because it's something we don't want growing there. It's taking over. Okay? Then it should come to this. Come to what? But 2 months dead. My father's only been dead 2 months. And then he says, nee, not so much. Not even 2 months. Later on, somewhere within the play, I can't remember exactly where, we're going to hear possibly that it's only been 2 weeks. So somewhere between 2 weeks and 2 months, his father died. And it's almost like on the way back from the funeral, his mother hooked up with his uncle. Almost maybe literally on the way back. And so he talks about his father and he talks about the current king. His father, he says, was a Hyperion, the sun god, to Claudius, who is a satyr. What's a satyr? Is there a gloss there? Nope. Hyperion, god of the sun, and nothing for Saturn. Half goat, half man. So, God to subhuman. Talk about things rank and gross. And then what does he go on to talk about? He talks about his mother. Freud had a lot to say about this play. Okay? He talks about how she would hang on him. It's like she got her reason for living from him, etc., etc. And he goes on, skipping a bit, line 150. A beast that once discourse of reason would have mourned longer. A beast that lacks, that is, the ability to communicate rational thought. My dogs, he says, would have mourned longer than she did. Married with my uncle, my father's brother. See, that's emphasizing the incest. But no more like my father than I to Hercules. Within a month. See, there we go. We've just been cut down from nay, not 2 months. Now we're within a month. Ere yet the salt of most unrighteous tears had left the flushing in her galled eye, she married. That is, before her tears even dried. He's exaggerating here. She got married. Oh, most wicked speed, to post with such dexterity to incestuous sheets. With such dexterity, she was so quick to get into my uncle's bed. It's like she was a world famous gymnast. Right? And notice he calls them incestuous sheets. It is not, nor cannot come to good, but break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. Why? Why must he hold his tongue? He doesn't have, MTSU counseling services center. There's not a, dial 1-800 for discussing your problems at Elsinore. There's not a counseling service at Elsinore. Who's he going to say this stuff to? Is he going to go to his mother? Mom, I'm really having trouble because you're sleeping with my uncle. Is he going to go to his stepfather? No. What about his friends? What about Horatio? Probably not. Why? Because then Horatio has the burden of knowing what Hamlet knows or what Hamlet thinks. And Horatio would then look at the king and queen and go, something's funny there. Okay? So Horatio and the others come in at that point. And Hamlet's like, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at university. Hamlet and Horatio go to the same university, Wittenberg. And Horatio's like, I was here for your father's funeral. He goes, no. You were here for my mother's marriage. He said, yeah, followed hard upon. That is, it was like it was the next day, man. What gives? What's going on with your family? Okay? So, Hamlet says, in there, I think, methinks I see my father. Horatio, where? In my mind. Horatio's like, really? Because he saw him the night before. And Hamlet says, up here, Horatio. Okay? Horatio says, I saw him once, etc., etc. And then he says, actually, these guys saw him 2 nights ago. Or saw him 2 nights in succession. And then I saw him. You saw who? Your father. Okay. So, Hamlet says, Act 1, Scene 3, line 16, page 1615, 240, line 243. I'm going to wait with you tonight. If it assume my noble father's person, I'll speak to it. Notice that verb he uses, if it assume. That is, if this thing takes the shape of my father. Well, what did Horatio say in response to Marcellus's, is it not like the king? As thou art to thyself. That is, no, it's not like the king. It is the king. Hamlet, notice, is like Horatio was before Horatio saw the ghost. He hasn't seen it. He doesn't yet fully believe it. So he says, if whatever this thing is you guys saw takes the form of my father, he's not saying if it is my father. He says, I'm going to talk to it, even though hell gaped wide before me, even though I get swallowed into hell. Okay? But don't tell anybody else. So they say, okay. They all leave then. Hamlet gets another little short soliloquy. My father's spirit in arms? That is, dressed in armor? All is not well. I doubt, meaning I expect some foul play. Oh, what the night we're come. It's like noon. And he's like, man, let it be midnight. He wants to see this thing. Till then, sit still, my soul. Why does he have to tell his soul to sit still? Why do you, if you have a dog, why do you have to tell the dog, sit? What's the dog doing before you say that? Jumping, moving, being rambunctious? So you give it a command. He does the same thing to his soul. Sit still, my soul. Why? Because his soul is not still. His soul, like the water here, it's bubbling. Hamlet's like a volcano, ready to blow. That's why earlier he said, down my heart, because I can't speak about this. Or break my heart. Okay? So, scene 3. We get a room in Polonius's house. Okay? And we see in this scene, Polonius addresses his children. But first, we see Laertes and Ophelia. They're the 2 children of Polonius. And Laertes tells Ophelia he's getting ready to leave. Okay? And he says, let me hear from you when I go off. And he says, you doubt? That is, you don't think I'll write? He says, for Hamlet, trifling of his favor, hold it a fashion. In other words, he's kind of saying, I think you might forget about writing me because of your interest in Hamlet and his interest in you. Okay? So he says about Hamlet, take his favor, his quote-unquote friendship with you, which is more than friendship, is no more but a trifle. No more but so. He says, think it no more. Why? For nature, crescent, does not grow alone, enthused in bulk, but as this temple waxes, the inward surface of the mind and soul grows wide withal. What? What is Hamlet to Denmark? He's the future king, right? He's the prince. So he says, Hamlet's nature, right? Growing, that's the crescent part. Hamlet's nature growing, coming into what is his own, will demand what? If he's the future king, can he choose his wife for himself? No, he can't. It's not like today, like like William and Harry were allowed to do. Okay? 100 years ago, Harry never would have been allowed to marry Meghan Markle. William would have been allowed to marry Kate Middleton. Charles, he was kind of forced. I don't mean literally forced. It's not like his mother had a gun at his back. But he was kind of forced to marry Diana. Why Diana? Well, she was someone he knew, he had met, etc., etc. But why else? What did Diana have that Kate Middleton didn't have, that Meghan Markle didn't have? Anybody know? Her last name is Spencer. Was. Aristocracy. She was Lady Diana before she even got married. Okay? That is, there's a little teeny tiny drop of kind of royal blood there. Kate Middleton and Meghan Markle don't have, an ion of royal blood. So, Hamlet can't choose for himself. I mean, yeah, he might be out there having, bar hopping, having clubbing with you now, but when the time comes, he's going to drop you like a brick, okay? That's why he says, line 19, he may not, as unvalued persons do, carve for himself. He can't choose. So he goes on and says, upon his decision, the whole state rests. So she says, okay. I'll follow your advice. But you follow it too. That is, she says, but good, my brother, line 46, do not, as some ungracious pastors do, show me the steep and thorny way to heaven, whiles, like a puffed and reckless libertine, himself the primrose path of dalliance treads. That is, the steep and thorny way. Christ says the way is narrow, the gate is small. So, she says, don't give me a double standard. Don't say, oh, you're a woman, you got to do this. Well, I'm a man, I can do whatever I want. No. He says, no, don't worry, I would never do that, okay? So Polonius comes in, their father. Keep in mind, what is Polonius' job? What's his occupation? He's the main advisor to the king. He's the king's main counselor. Okay? So, he sees that Laertes is still there and says, still here? You should be on the ship by now. But, hold on. Before you go, let me give you some advice. Line 58. 57, he says, there, my blessing with you. Okay? And it's probably where he does the mark of the cross on him. And he says, in these few precepts, in thy memory, look thou character. Look thou character doesn't mean look to your character. Character in this context and in this usage in Shakespeare's day meant write down. Okay? So write these precepts in your memory, these little short nuggets of wisdom. Now, I asked my previous class, I don't think I remember to ask you this, to read over these and decide, is this wisdom? Are these good pieces of advice? Or is he totally wrong? I'll make it pretty clear. I think everything he says here is good advice. It's really good advice. What's the problem? He doesn't follow his own advice. He does exactly what Ophelia suggests Laertes might do. He gives the steep and thorny way to heaven, but he doesn't follow his own words. So, for example, what's his first precept? Give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unproportioned thought his end. Give thy thoughts no tongue. Don't speak what you think. What did we hear Hamlet say when he talked about break my heart? He had to hold his tongue. Notice, Hamlet's already doing that without receiving the advice. Okay? Give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unproportioned thought his act. Unproportioned thought means unthought out. What do we say today? Think before you speak. I had this one student in one class. I'd ask a question, and the question would barely be out of my mouth, and he'd say something. And the poor guy, 99% of the wrong, what he'd say really had nothing to do with what the question asked for. And then finally, at one point, I just had to take him aside. I can't remember his name, Fred. And I'd say, Fred, you need to think before you respond. Just let it sit for a moment, and once he did that, he stopped responding nearly as much. He still responded, but he started to think first. Okay? What's his job again? He's counselor. That is, he has to give his thoughts a lot to the king. Be thou familiar, but by no means vulgar. That is, be friendly, but don't be overly friendly. Don't be so out in people's faces they get tired of you. Have you ever thrown a party where you kind of wanted everybody gone by a certain time, and there's one person or two people who just don't get the hint, and they don't leave, and my wife and I have done this before. We've literally put on pajamas, and this one guy just, and finally was like, Larry, leave. It's 2:00. Leave. Okay? That's what he means. Be familiar, be known, but don't outwear your welcome. Those friends thou hast, and their adoption tried, that is, and you've proven kind of their friendship, grapple them to thy soul with hoops of steel. That is, bind them to yourself. Make them really good close friends. But do not dull thy palm with entertainment of each new-hatched, unfledged comrade. But don't do what? This, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, whatever. They're all what? Social media. And in Facebook, you can have friends. How many of the people, I should ask this question. How many people that you're friends with on Facebook are you literally friends with? That is, people you've met, people you had a meal with, people you've done something with. Because I know people who have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 friends that they've never seen other than a Facebook picture. Okay? Polonius is saying, those aren't friends. Those aren't friends. And those friends aren't, get that up. Get out of here. There's only 37 minutes left. You shouldn't spend a lot of time on people you've just met, he's saying. Okay? Have a tight, close-knit group of friends. Keep everybody else kind of at arm's length. Okay? Beware of entrance to a quarrel, but being in, bear it that the opposed may beware of thee. Don't get into arguments. Don't get into fights. But if you do, what? Win. Win how? Decisively. Shock and awe. If you get into an argument, so defeat that other person that other people who are around and see, no, don't get into a fight with. All right? See, one of the things, should I go there? One of the things that led to 9/11, 2001, was Osama bin Laden said, and he said this in an interview, and he said it before 9/11, so we should have known. He said the United States is a paper tiger. Why? Because he went back to Vietnam. That is, he tied the United States in 2000 back to our experience in Vietnam when we left Vietnam. We didn't leave Vietnam, quote unquote, victoriously. And then what happened after Vietnam? We just had kind of one thing after another. We left Lebanon. Why? Because our Marine barracks was bombed. Okay? And then there were, thing after thing after, and he said, they're a bunch of pushovers. Okay, yeah, Reagan invaded Grenada. Ooh, an island of, 5,000 people, and the Marines kicked, what? He thought, it's nothing. If we hit them, bin Laden thought, they will back down. They will cower. They will pull their troops out of the Middle East. Okay? So, you get into a quarrel, you better win. Another phrase from the 19th century, if you strike at the king, you better kill him. Because if you don't, the king's going to come back. So, give every man thy ear, but few thy voice. Listen to what everyone says. And he does. I don't think he means they're listen as in bugs, listening devices. I think he means when someone wants to speak to you, listen to what they say, but what's the don't give thy voice mean? But don't respond. Don't reply. Because the give every man thy ear ties to the next line. Take each man's censure. Here's a little something Trump could use. Trump doesn't take censure very well. What's meant by censure? Maybe you could have done this a little better. Maybe you could improve on this. I mean, that's gentle censure. You're a damn fool. That's harsher censure. But he says, take every man's censure. So when somebody criticizes you, notice what he's saying. Take it. That is, take it to heart. Listen to it. But reserve thy judgment. Reserve thy judgment means what? Oh, yeah? Don't talk back. Don't give censure in return. Okay? The early church fathers all say exactly this. They say, treat every man's criticism of yourself as a dead man would. What? And the example they give is, go to a corpse and start berating it. You dirty, rotten son of a blah, 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 blah. How does the corpse respond? It doesn't. Their point is, you should be like that corpse. You shouldn't respond at all. That's what he's saying. Okay? Costly thy habit as thy purse can buy. That is, wear clothes you can afford, but not expressed in fancy. Rich, not gaudy. What would you think if a student came in? I had this happen, something similar to this the other day. A guy comes in and he's wearing a tux to class. Or a woman comes in and she's wearing a wedding gown. You go, what? What's going on here? One of my classes the other day, Peck Hall 301, we're sitting in there and this guy walks by. And the guy walks by with a top hat. And I've seen him several times since then. And they're like, what? What's his point? Don't be showy. Don't be extravagant. Don't draw attention to yourself. Wear nice clothes, but you're not Elton John, okay? So don't act like you're Elton John. For the apparel oft proclaims the man. Now, I don't know about you, but I have rebelled against that mentality from the time I was a teenager on. Because what does he say? Clothes make the man or the woman. So you go to a job interview. Unless that job interview is, for some kind of manual labor, how should you be dressed? Appropriately for a job interview. Probably suit and tie. Probably a dress or nice slacks at least. You don't go wearing holey jeans and a t-shirt for an accountant's job if you're an accountant major. You dress the part, is his point. Okay? Skip a little bit. Neither a borrower nor a lender be. For loan oft loses both itself and friend, and borrowing dulleth edge of husbandry. Don't loan money to your friends. Because what happens if they don't pay you back? You lose the money, and you probably lost the friend as well. Similarly, don't borrow money from a friend. Why? Because borrowing dulleth, what do you mean husbandry? See, we think of husbandry, that term only in the context of like animal husbandry. That is, taking care of, breeding, etc. animals. It's not what it means. It means hard work. Why do hard work if you can borrow the money? Student loans. Why work full time to work yourself through college so that you don't have loans? I mean, you know what the number one form of debt is in the United States? It is student loans. More money is owed in student loans than are owed in house mortgages in the United States. It's like 1.1, 1.2 trillion dollars. It blows my mind to even consider that. Okay? So, and this above all, that is above everything else I've said. To thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. What's that mean, to your own self be true?
Be true to yourself.
Okay, what's that mean? I mean, it's exactly right. But how do you be true to yourself? Can you lie to yourself? You can, but that's not really what he means. He means follow what you, in your heart of hearts, know to be true. Don't do what someone else wants you to do unless you know it's the right thing to do. You know, don't give in to peer pressure. Don't. So he's saying follow that inner compass, whatever that is. Okay? And if you do that, he says, then you could never be false to anyone. Why? Because if you're following what you know to be true, then it's impossible to be false. Because what would you say to someone who wants you to do something you know not to be true? No, I can't do that. So you're being true to that person and you're being true to yourself at the same time. Okay? Now, as I said at the beginning of this, I think every one of these is really, really good advice. The problem is Polonius doesn't follow his own advice. He doesn't give all of his thoughts. He doesn't allow all of his thoughts to stay thoughts. He speaks his thoughts unproportionedly. That is, without thinking ramifications or repercussions. Okay? He is somewhat vulgar in terms of his familiarity with the king and queen. He's around too much. He presumes too much. He doesn't take every man's censure and reserve his tongue. So everything he says to his son, nearly everything, I don't know, maybe his clothes aren't gaudy, but nearly everything he says to his son, he doesn't follow himself. And I'll give it away. Because he doesn't follow it himself, he dies. In fact, he dies specifically because he does not beware of entrance to a quarrel. He sticks his nose where it doesn't belong and gets it cut off. Okay? So Laertes says, thank you. And then Polonius addresses his daughter. And he asks her, what were you and Laertes talking about? She says, Hamlet. What about Hamlet? She says, line 99. He hath, my lord, of late made many tenders of his affection to me. Many tenders. That is, like, he's given things to show his affection toward me. Polonius. Affection? You speak like a green girl. Green girl, he means you speak like someone who hasn't been around the block. You speak like someone who's never been in love, who doesn't know how this game works. Maybe she is. Maybe Hamlet's her quote-unquote first boyfriend. Maybe she doesn't know what men are like. Okay? Unsifted in such perilous circumstances. Do you believe his tenders, as you call them? Notice what she says. I do not know, my lord, what I should think. Now, it's that kind of response that's given Ophelia kind of a somewhat bad name in the criticism of Shakespeare, in Shakespeare literary criticism. What do I mean by that? Well, she kind of acts like a dolt. Oh, gee, Daddy, I don't know what I should think. Why don't you tell me? I mean, that's kind of how she comes across there. So he says, I will teach you. Okay? He's just taught his son. Now he's going to teach his daughter. What's he going to teach her? He says, think yourself a baby that you obtain these tenders for true pay, which are not sterling. By sterling, he means they're not real payment. It's like IOUs. This is funny money. What's his point? What's Hamlet really giving you these tenders for? What does Hamlet really want? Ladies, what do men really want? Sex. That's it. That's what he's implying. All Hamlet wants is to get you in bed. And then he'll leave. Okay? She says, my lord, he hath importuned me with love in honorable fashion. That is, he hasn't said anything about sex. Everything's been on the up and up. Fashion, you may call it. Why does he say fashion, you may call it? What is fashion? What's high fashion? Clothing, right? You take clothes off, you put them on. What did Hamlet say about his inky cloak and his nighted colors? These are but the trappings and the suits of woe, that a man may act at. So, Polonius, dealing with the same kind of theme, says, he's playing you, girl. Open your eyes. He hath given countenance to his speech. And you've got a gloss there about countenance, credit, support. I don't understand these glosses. What is credit and support? How does he give credit to his speech? Come on, Ophelia, believe me. I really love. Really? Is that really going to work? No. I think what she means is everything about his demeanor, his behavior, just spoke truth. Because every now and then, maybe not every now and then, maybe usually, you can tell when somebody's lying to you. And she's like, he ain't lying. With almost all the holy vows of heaven. Notice, she doesn't say all. Almost all. That is, he's sworn his love to me, but it's not like we're engaged. He says, I springs to catch woodcocks. That is, traps to catch birds. He's trying to entrap you, Ophelia. He wants one thing, incestuous sheets. Not incestuous in this case. He wants to get you in bed. Okay? So big long speech there by him. So he says, from this time forth, he tells her, stay away from Hamlet. She says, I shall obey my lord. So she's going to obey her father. Notice the difference between Hermia. She's going to obey her father. She's going to turn away Hamlet. And we get told in Act 3 pretty clearly, Hamlet and Ophelia really do love each other. I mean, this is honest, sincere, real love. And it's pretty clear they've never done anything to consummate. There's not been any sex between them. Okay? So she says, I will obey you. Okay? Scene 4, we're back at the platform. It's now night, and they're waiting for the ghost. So, the ghost comes in. Hamlet sees it. Hamlet addresses it. Angels and ministers of grace, defend us. Why angels and ministers of grace? What's he really doing? God, help us. Send us your guardian angels to defend us from this. Be thou a spirit of health or goblin damned. Spirit of health, something from heaven to bring health to us, or a goblin, something from hell that is damned, a demon. Bring with the airs from heaven, the nice, cool, gentle breeze from heaven, or blasts from hell. Be thy intents wicked or charitable, thou comest in such a questionable shape that I will speak to you. I don't care if you're from God or Satan, I'm going to speak to you. And I'll say, Hamlet, king, father, royal Dane. You're not some disembodied, you're dead. Okay? Tell why thy canonized bones, hearsed in death, and you've got a gloss there for canonized, buried according to the canons of the church, okay? Sealed in its tomb. I mean, what some Christian funeral services do is, the body's put in the coffin's put in the grave, and they say, this tomb is sealed until the day of resurrection. And that's the way it kind of, keep the body down there, don't let it come out. So he says, what are you doing? Why are you here? What should we do? And the ghost beckons to Hamlet. And so Horatio Marcellus tried to tell Hamlet, don't follow it, because you don't know what it's going to do. It might try to lead you into death, etc. Hamlet's, I'm going to go with it. Okay? So Hamlet goes off with the ghost. Scene 5. Whither wilt thou lead me? Speak, I'll go no further. So Hamlet finally, he's like, okay, I'm not going any more. You got to tell me who you are, what you want. Okay? Mark me. That is, look at me. That's what mark means. Pay attention. Hamlet. Okay. My hour is almost come when I to sulphurous and tormenting flames must render up myself. Sulphurous and tormenting flames, what does that sound like? Hell. The lake of sulfur. The lake of fire. Alas, poor ghost. Don't pity me. But lend thy serious hearing to what I shall unfold. I will speak. What does Hamlet mean? I am bound to hear. He's bound how? You're my father, I'm your son. I've got to listen. So art thou to revenge. There's the revenge tragedy. When thou shalt hear, what? I am thy father. I know you're my father's spirit. Doomed for a certain term to walk the night, and for the day confined to fast in fires, till the foul crimes done in my days of nature are burnt in purge away. So where is Hamlet Sr. during the day?
Grave.
He's in purgatory. His body's in the grave. His soul is in purgatory. Why? Well, in the Protestant belief system, modern day Baptist, Methodist, Churches of Christ, etc., Episcopalian, Presbyterian, you've got only two options. Heaven and hell. That's it. Right? In Catholic belief, you've got heaven, purgatory, and hell. You only go to hell if you are quote unquote damned. Okay? You go to purgatory if you're mostly damned. You go to purgatory if you are eventually going to be saved. And what purgatory does is it purges you of the sulliedness, think of that word, that you brought upon yourself during life. Very few people go straight from earth to heaven. The saints. The saints don't go to purgatory. Saints go straight to heaven, essentially. So the ghost says, during the day, for the day confined to fast and fires, to the foul crimes done in my days of nature, that is, when I had a body, are burnt and purged away. So that makes it pretty clear that within the world of Hamlet, at least, this is what's going on. Now, when the play is performed, there would be a lot of people who go, well, he's talking about purgatory. That's not a Protestant belief. Okay? And there is real tension between Catholics and Protestants in Shakespeare's day. Not too many years before, Queen Elizabeth was having Catholics put to death. In fact, at the time this play is written, 1600, it's a capital offense to be a priest, a Catholic priest in England. Not to be celebrating Mass, just to be a Catholic priest in England. And that's because in 1588, the Catholics sided with Spain when Spain tried to invade England. Okay? The defeat of what's called the Spanish Armada. So, he says, but I can't tell you about my prison house. But if I could, boy, would I tell you a tale. But I can't, so we're not going to. So, if you did ever love your dear father, Hamlet, oh God. In other words, here it comes. Revenge is foul and most unnatural murder. Murder? Murder most foul is in the best it is, but this most foul, strange, and unnatural. It's foul, strange, and it's unnatural. Why is it unnatural? Because he killed his brother, Claudius. Notice what else that therefore brings into mind. He's going to call it the primal sin. That is, it goes back to the first sin. Not the sin of Adam and Eve, but the first murder, Cain and Abel. Okay? So, Hamlet, tell me. And I, with wings as swift as meditation or the thoughts of love, may sweep to my revenge. Tell me, and I'll go kill the SOB who killed you. Like, before the hour's gone. So, he says, Hamlet, here. You've heard, and notice what the ghost does. The ghost says, you've heard this. We haven't heard that yet. That's why the ghost is telling it. Okay? What is it that the ghost tells us? How did Hamlet Sr. die? Did Claudius slit his throat? Stab him from behind? Push him down a cliff? Like in Lion King? No, he poisoned him while he was sleeping in his orchard. He snuck up beside him and he poured a poison in his ear so that he died. Unforgiven, because he wasn't allowed to go to a priest and say, forgive me, Father, for I had, And the serpent that did sting thy father's life now wears his crown. Notice, the serpent, we're back to the Garden of Eden imagery again. He's saying your stepfather is Satan, essentially. Not literally. Hamlet, oh, my prophetic soul. Why does he say his soul is prophetic? Put that in modern terms. What's Hamlet really saying? I knew it. I knew there was something wrong here. I knew Claudius was involved. My uncle, I, that incestuous, that adulterate. Notice what the ghost knows. And your uncle married my wife. Okay? So, he goes on, big long speech. The ghost does. And skip the rest of his speech, and the ghost leaves. And Hamlet has a soliloquy, right? Because they've gone off to a different part of the platform, and the others aren't there anymore. O all you host of heaven, O earth, what else shall I couple hell? That is, shall I marry heaven with hell and with the earth? Fie, hold my heart, you my sinews grown up instant old, bear me up. Remember thee? Yea, from the table of my memory, I'll wipe away all trivial fond records. Hold on a second. Back up. End of Hamlet Senior speech. Hamlet Senior says, line 81, 2, 3, 4. But howsoever thou pursues this act, that is, however you go about getting this revenge, taint not thy mind. Another word for taint, sully. Okay? Don't besmirch your mind. Don't make your mind impure. Okay? Also, leave your mother alone. Leave her to heaven. Let heaven work on her. Okay? You just kill Claudius. Don't taint your mind with this. Leave your mother alone. So, Hamlet says, remember thee. Look at the top of the next page. Now remember, his father just said, taint not your mind. Yea, from the table of my memory, I'll wipe away all trivial fond records, all saws of books, all forms, all pressures past, that youth and observation copied there, and thy commandment all alone shall live within the book and volume of my brain. Taint not your mind. Think of his mind as being a gallon of white paint. What can you do to taint that paint? You drop a single drop of any other color. Or the gallon of yellow paint. You drop a single drop of any other color, you've tainted it. So he said, don't do that to your mind. Let your mind stay pure, Hamlet. What does Hamlet say he's going to do? Everything he has stored in his mind, he says, I'm going to wipe it all away and replace it with what? Kill Claudius. Everything else, everything he has learned, everything he has studied from his first recollections, gone. He's not tainting his mind. He's doing what to it? He's totally baptizing it with a new idea. He's replacing everything with kill. He's not following his father's advice. Just as we are going to see, Laertes doesn't follow his father's advice. Well, Laertes' father's advice is good advice. Within the Christian tradition is Hamlet Sr.'s advice. Kill your uncle. Good. No. We're told, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Christ tells his followers, someone strikes you on one cheek, turn the other cheek. He who would seek his life must lose his life. He who would follow after me must carry his own cross. That is, you have to die to the world, all that kind of stuff. This is not that. Okay? Hamlet, I'm going to kill them. So Horatio and the others come in. And what does Hamlet make them do? And the ghost. Swear you will never tell about this. And the ghost moves around on the stage and says, swear. And they go, we swear. Swear on the sword. We swear. Okay? So that's when Hamlet says at the bottom of 1625, line 165 and following, okay, Horatio says, this is wondrous strange. And by that he means it's unbelievable. Hamlet. And therefore, as a stranger, give it welcome. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. And he's kind of implying there that Horatio is the kind of person who only believes what he sees. What did he say about the ghost? I won't believe it until I see it. He sees it and then he believes. Hamlet says there's an awful lot going on. More than what we can see. Okay? So he says at that point, if I later on put on an antic disposition, don't give out that I'm doing that. Don't let others know. Okay? And the ghost says, swear. And then, we swear. Okay? So Hamlet says, concluding only Act 1. So, gentlemen, with all my love I do commend me to you, and what so poor a man as Hamlet is may do to express the love and friending to you, God willing shall not lack. That is, if I can do something to help you later, I will. Let us go in together and still your fingers on your lips. That is, no word. I pray the time is out of joint. What's he mean, time is out of joint? Do I have time for this? Yeah. Shakespeare's playing on an idea that will later get called the great chain of being. Okay? In the great chain of being, you've got God who exists above everything else, and then everything else that exists in this chain of existence. Okay? From the highest angelic order, the cherubim and the seraphim, down to the lowest particular, smallest piece of matter. Okay? Within this also is this similar construction, of time. Because how does time work? It works by seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, years, etc. So if time is out of joint, the chain is broken. And Hamlet says, time is out of joint, O cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right. I, Hamlet says, have got to fix this. And what he's implying there is it's going to take a lot out of me. How much is it going to take out of him? He's going to die. Okay? He's going to die. Nay, come on, let's go together. We'll stop right there, because that gives me just about enough time, cancel, to hand out the quiz. Before I do, put everything away. Quiz is 10 points. After everything we went over today, you ought to do fairly well, because I believe I've given everything away that's on this quiz. So when you're done,